The champagne glass slipped from my fingers. Shattering against the marble floor of the grand ballroom, 200 guests turned to stare, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the scene unfolding before me. My sister Vanessa had her arms wrapped around my fiancé, Marcus, their lips locked in a passionate kiss right there at our engagement party. The worst part? I had seen this exact moment before. 3 years ago, in another life, this betrayal had destroyed me. But this time, I was ready. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The morning of March 15th started like any other Wednesday, except for the crushing weight in my chest that had become my constant companion. I stood in the bathroom of my downtown Chicago apartment, staring at my reflection in the mirror, dark circles under my eyes, hollow cheeks, and a tremor in my hands that hadn't stopped since the doctors delivered their verdict 2 weeks ago. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months to live, if I was lucky. At 28, I had everything planned out. The wedding to Marcus Wellington was set for June, our dream house in Lincoln Park was already under contract, and my marketing firm had just landed its biggest client. Then cancer happened, and everything crumbled like a house of cards. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent my entire life being the responsible one, the achiever, the daughter who never caused problems. My younger sister Vanessa was the wild child, the one who dropped out of college to pursue modeling, who bounced between jobs and relationships like a pinball. Yet here I was, facing death at 28, while she lived her carefree life in Los Angeles. My phone buzzed against the bathroom counter. A text from Marcus: "Can't make lunch today. Client emergency. Rain check." I stared at the message, feeling that familiar knot in my stomach. Marcus had been distant lately, canceling dates, working late more often. I told myself it was the stress of my diagnosis, that he was struggling to cope, but deep down, I knew something else was happening. The doorbell rang, interrupting my spiraling thoughts. I wrapped my robe tighter around my increasingly frail frame and padded to the front door. Through the peephole, I saw a delivery man holding an enormous bouquet of white roses. "Charlotte Morrison?" he asked when I opened the door. "That's me." He handed me the flowers and a small envelope. No return address, just my name written in elegant script. Inside the apartment, I opened the card with shaking fingers. "For the most beautiful bride-to-be in Chicago. Can't wait to see you walk down the aisle. Your secret admirer." My blood ran cold. Marcus always sent red roses, and his handwriting looked nothing like the careful script on this card. I set the flowers on my kitchen counter and called him immediately. "Hey babe." His voice sounded strained. "What's up? Did you send me white roses today?" A pause. "White rose? No, why would I send white roses? You know I always go with red." "Someone sent them. The card says they're from a secret admirer. Probably just a mix-up at the florist. Don't worry about it." But I was worrying about it, along with everything else that felt wrong in my life. The mysterious flowers, Marcus's increasing absence, the way he flinched when I touched him lately. Even dying, I couldn't escape the feeling that my world was built on quicksand. Later that afternoon, I decided to surprise Marcus at his law firm. Maybe if I made more effort, if I pushed through the fatigue and nausea, we could reconnect. I dressed carefully in a navy dress that hid how much weight I'd lost, and took a taxi to his downtown office. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt endless. My reflection in the polished steel doors showed a woman I barely recognized. The vibrant, confident Charlotte Morrison, who had built a successful business from nothing, had been replaced by this fragile shell. Mrs. Morrison, Marcus's secretary, Janet, looked surprised to see me. "Wellington didn't mention you were coming by." I wanted to surprise him. "Is he in?" Janet's expression grew uncomfortable. "He's in a meeting. It has been for the past hour." Something in her tone made me pause. "What kind of meeting?" "A private consultation. With a client." I knew Janet well enough to read between the lines. She was protecting Marcus from something, which meant there was something to protect him from. "I'll wait in his office." Oh, I don't think that's a good idea. The meeting might run quite long, but I was already walking past her desk toward Marcus's corner office. The door was closed, but I could hear voices inside. Low, intimate voices. My hand froze on the handle when I recognized the second voice. Vanessa. My sister's laugh drifted through the door, followed by Marcus's deeper chuckle. They were talking quietly, but the tone was unmistakable. I pressed my ear against the wood, my heart hammering so hard I was sure they could hear it. She has no idea, Vanessa was saying. Charlotte's always been so trusting, even when we were kids. She never suspected I was the one who broke her music box and blamed it on the neighbor's cat. This is different, Ness. She's sick. Really sick. Which is exactly why this is perfect timing. She won't fight for you, Marcus. She doesn't have the strength. In 6 months, maybe less, she'll be gone, and we can finally be together without all this sneaking around. The world tilted sideways. I gripped the doorframe to keep from falling, bile rising in my throat. 6 months. They were talking about my death like it was a convenience, a problem that would solve itself. Marcus's voice was softer now, guilty. I never meant for it to happen this way. When Charlotte and I got engaged, I thought I loved her. But then you came back to Chicago, and then you remembered who you really belonged with, Vanessa finished. We've been dancing around this for years, Marcus, ever since college. College, they had a history I didn't know about. All those times Marcus had visited me at Northwestern, all those weekends, Vanessa had mysteriously shown up. I had been so blind, so stupidly trusting. The engagement party is in 2 weeks, Marcus said. How am I supposed to smile and pretend everything's normal? The same way you've been pretending for months. Besides, it's not like you'll have to pretend much longer. Charlotte's getting weaker every day. I saw the medical bills on her kitchen counter last week when I visited. The treatments aren't working. I had invited her over for dinner, cooked her favorite meal despite feeling like death warmed over. She hugged me goodbye, told me she loved me, and all the while she was planning to steal my fiancé. She deserves better than this, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. She deserves to die believing the man she loves actually loves her back. Isn't that kinder than the truth? Their conversation continued, but I couldn't hear it over the roaring in my ear. I stumbled away from the door, past Janet's concerned questions, into the elevator and out onto the busy Chicago street. The spring air felt thick and suffocating, and I found myself retching into a trash can while business people hurried past. My phone rang. Vanessa's name flashed on the screen. Charlotte, how are you feeling today? Her voice was bright, cheerful, exactly the way it had always been, the same voice that had just been plotting my fiancé's seduction. I'm fine, I managed. Good. I was thinking we should go dress shopping this weekend, for your engagement party. I want to find something that will make Marcus's jaw drop. The cruel irony of her words made me laugh, a bitter sound that scraped my throat raw. Sure, Nessa, that sounds perfect. Great. I'll pick you up Saturday at noon. Oh, and Charlotte, I love you. You know that, right? I love you too. I hung up and stood there on the sidewalk, watching the city move around me, people hurrying to meetings, grabbing coffee, living their lives. None of them knew that Charlotte Morrison was dying, that her sister was stealing her fiancé, that everything she had built was turning to ash. But as I stood there, something strange happened. The crushing weight in my chest began to shift, transforming into something else, something harder and sharper. They thought I was weak, that I would roll over and die quietly while they destroyed everything I cared about. They were wrong. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number for Dr. Harrison, my oncologist. He answered on the second ring. Charlotte, how are you feeling? I need to know exactly how much time I have left. No sugarcoating, no false hope, the truth. A pause. Charlotte, we've discussed this. It's difficult to predict. Dr. Harrison, how long, given the current progression in your response to treatment? Realistically, 3 to 4 months, maybe less. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Thank you for being honest. I hung up and started walking. 4 months. Long enough to plan something special for my dear sister and beloved fiancé. long enough to ensure they got exactly what they deserved. The engagement party was in 2 weeks. 200 guests, all of Chicago's elite, gathered to celebrate the love between Charlotte Morrison and Marcus Wellington. It would be the perfect stage for what I had in mind. I spent the walk home, planning, my mind sharper than it had been in weeks. By the time I reached my apartment, I knew exactly what I was going to do. They wanted to play games. They wanted to use my impending death as their opportunity. Fine, but they had no idea who they were really dealing with. The white roses were still on my kitchen counter, their petals now edged with brown. I picked up the card and read it again. For the most beautiful bride-to-be in Chicago. I smiled for the first time in weeks. It was going to be a beautiful party indeed. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The fog of medication and despair had lifted, replaced by something much more useful: purpose. I had 13 days until the engagement party, and every single one of them would count. My first stop was the safe deposit box at First National Bank. Inside, along with my will and important documents, was a manila envelope I had hoped never to open. 3 years ago, when I first started my marketing firm, I had hired a private investigator to run background checks on potential business partners. The PI, a woman named Rebecca Torres, had been thorough, discreet, and surprisingly affordable. I still had her card. Rebecca's office was in a nondescript building in Wicker Park, sandwiched between a vintage clothing store and a coffee shop. She looked exactly as I remembered: mid-40s, sharp eyes, and the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that inspired confidence. "Charlotte Morrison," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her cluttered desk. "I heard about your diagnosis. I'm sorry." "Thank you. I need your help with something sensitive." "I'm listening." I pulled out a photograph of Vanessa and Marcus from my purse. It was from last Christmas, the three of us at my parents' house in Lake Forest. We looked like the perfect family. "I need to know everything about their relationship, how long it's been going on, where they meet, what they've been doing behind my back." Rebecca studied the photo. "Your sister and your fiancé?" "Yes." "This is going to hurt, Charlotte." "Are you sure you want to know?" "I'm dying, Rebecca. What's left to hurt?" She nodded slowly. "I'll need a retainer. 5,000 to start." I wrote the check without hesitation. Money was meaningless now. I had a successful business, substantial savings, and no future to save for. "How long will it take?" "Give me a week. I'll have a preliminary report by next Friday." "I need it sooner. I have 6 days." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "That's not much time for a thorough investigation." "I'm not asking for a thorough. I'm asking for action." She leaned back in her chair, studying me with new interest. "What exactly are you planning, Charlotte?" "Justice." The weekend dress shopping expedition with Vanessa was exactly the torture I had expected. We spent 4 hours at Nordstrom, Saks, and various boutiques along Michigan Avenue. Vanessa tried on outfit after outfit, each one more revealing than the last. "What do you think of this one?" she asked, modeling a red cocktail dress that hugged every curve. "Too much for an engagement party." "It's perfect," I said, watching her preen in the mirror. "Marcus will love it." The lie came easily. Marcus would love it, which was precisely why she shouldn't wear it. But I wasn't going to stop her. Every weapon she handed me was one less I had to forge myself. "I'm so excited for your party," she continued, examining herself from different angles. "It's going to be magical. You and Marcus are so lucky to have found each other." "We really are," I agreed. "He's everything I ever wanted in a husband. And he clearly adores you. The way he looks at you." She trailed off, her expression momentarily faltering. For just a second, I saw something that might have been guilt. Then it was gone, replaced by her usual bright smile. "I'm so glad you moved back to Chicago," I said. "Having you here for the wedding planning has meant everything to me." "Of course. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Besides, someone needs to keep you from picking boring flowers." We laughed together, two sisters shopping for a party. To any observer, we looked normal, loving, close. They couldn't see the careful calculations behind my smiles, the way I cataloged every gesture, every word, every unconscious tell that revealed her true intentions. That evening, I had dinner with Marcus at Giovanni's, our usual spot. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with his wine glass and avoiding eye contact. "Everything okay?" I asked, cutting into my chicken piccata. "Just work stress. A big case is coming up. Anything I can help with?" He laughed, but it sounded forced. "Not unless you've suddenly developed expertise in corporate law. I could learn. I've got time on my hands these days." The reminder of my condition made him wince. "Charlotte, about that, we should talk about practical things. Your medical directives, the business succession plan. Later," I interrupted. "Tonight, I just want to focus on us. On our future." "Our future," he repeated, the words sitting heavy between us. I reached across the table and took his hand. His skin was cold, his fingers trembling slightly. "I love you, Marcus. Whatever happens, I need you to know that." "I love you too," he said, but his eyes were fixed on our joined hands instead of my face. The next few days passed in a blur of party preparations. I threw myself into the details with an energy that surprised everyone, including myself. The caterers, the florist, the string quartet. I managed every aspect personally, making sure everything would be absolutely perfect. Marcus's mother, Patricia Wellington, stopped by my apartment Tuesday evening to review the guest list. She was a formidable woman in her 60s, with silver hair and the kind of bone-deep elegance that came from generations of old money. "Charlotte, dear, you look terrible," she said, settling into my living room with a cup of tea. "Are you sure you're up for hosting such a large event?" "I'm fine, Patricia, just tired. Perhaps we should consider postponing." "No," the word came out sharper than I intended. "I'm sorry, this party is important to me. I need it to happen." She studied me with the same calculating look I had seen in her son. "Of course, dear. I understand. It's just that Marcus has seemed distracted lately. I wondered if there was something wrong." "Nothing's wrong. We're both just dealing with a lot right now." "Yes, I'm sure you are." She sipped her tea delicately. "I hope you know how much our family cares about you, Charlotte. You've been such a positive influence on Mark." "Have I?" "Oh yes. Before you, he was so scattered, always chasing after inappropriate women. That actress. What was her name? Victoria? Vanessa? Some starlet from California." My blood turned to ice. "Vanessa? Yes, that's it. This was years ago, of course. College, I believe. She was quite beautiful, but completely unsuitable. No substance, no class. Just a pretty face and ambitious dreams. I was so relieved when Marcus came to his senses and ended things." "Ended things?" "Well, she ended them, technically. Ran off to Los Angeles to pursue modeling or acting or some such nonsense. Broke his heart. I'm afraid. He was quite taken with her." Patricia continued talking, but I couldn't hear her over the rush of blood in my ears. Marcus and Vanessa had dated in college. My sister had been his first love, the one who got away. And now she was back, using my impending death as an opportunity to reclaim what she thought was hers. "Charlotte, are you all right?" I forced myself to focus on Patricia's concerned face. "I'm fine. Just a bit of nausea. The medication, you know. Of course, I should let you rest." She gathered her purse and coat. "The party will be lovely, dear. I'm sure of it." After she left, I sat in my kitchen staring at the white roses. They were completely brown now, their petals scattered across the counter like confetti. I swept them into the trash and called Rebecca. "I need that report tonight," I said without preamble. "Charlotte, I told you, I'll pay double, triple, whatever it takes." A pause. "I'll have something for you by 10 o'clock. Rebecca's preliminary report was even more damning than I had expected. She had photos, credit card records, hotel receipts, and phone logs. The affair had been going on for 8 months, starting just 3 weeks after my diagnosis. They had been meeting at the Palmer House downtown, always on Tuesday afternoons when Marcus claimed to be in court. But the real bombshell was buried in the background research. Marcus had been in significant debt, gambling debts. Specifically, he owed nearly $200,000 to some very dangerous people. My life insurance policy, which would pay out $5 million, would solve all his problems. I set the report aside and pulled out my laptop. If Marcus thought he was going to inherit everything, he was in for a surprise. I spent the next 3 hours revising my will, my insurance beneficiaries, and my business succession plan. By dawn, I had restructured my entire estate. The engagement party was now 5 days away. I had 5 days to orchestrate the perfect revenge, to ensure that Marcus and Vanessa got exactly what they deserved. But first, I needed to make one more phone call. Dr. Harrison, it's Charlotte Morrison. I need to ask you about something unusual. If someone wanted to fake their death, hypothetically, what would that involve? The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought he had hung up. Charlotte, he said finally, what are you planning? Nothing illegal. I promise. I just need to understand the medical aspects. This is about your sister and your fiancé, isn't it? I shouldn't have been surprised that he knew. Doctors saw everything, heard everything. You know, I've been treating terminal patients for 20 years. I've seen this before. The vultures always start circling when someone is dying. Will you help me? Another long pause. What do you need to know? Dr. Harrison's office smelled antiseptic and false hope. I sat across from him, watching his weathered hands flip through my medical chart while he considered my request. Charlotte, what you're asking is complicated. Medically speaking, someone with your condition could experience sudden cardiac arrest at any time. The stress of your diagnosis, combined with the treatments, puts enormous strain on your heart. But if someone were to collapse suddenly at a public event, the immediate response would be CPR, paramedics, emergency room treatment. If someone had inside knowledge of your condition, they might be able to influence the response time. I leaned forward. What kind of inside knowledge? My nephew works for the Chicago Fire Department, Station 19. He's been a paramedic for 12 years. Dr. Harrison's voice was careful, professional. Hypothetically, if someone were to have a medical emergency at a specific location, and if the response team happened to be delayed due to, say, a traffic accident or another emergency call, how long would that delay need to be? 10 minutes. Maybe 15. Long enough for someone to appear clinically dead, but not long enough for actual brain damage. I pulled out my checkbook. What would your nephew need to make this happen? Charlotte, I can't. Dr. Harrison, I'm going to die anyway. In 3 months, maybe 4. This isn't about cheating death. This is about choosing how I die and making sure the people who betrayed me face consequences. He stared at me for a long moment. My nephew has a daughter with special needs. Her therapy isn't covered by insurance. $50,000 would cover her treatment for the next 5 years. Done. And Charlotte, if we do this, there's no going back. You'll officially be dead. New identity, new life. You can never contact your family again. They stopped being my family the moment they decided to use my death for their own gain. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of preparation. I emptied my bank accounts, liquidated my investments, and transferred everything to offshore accounts under a new identity Rebecca had helped me create. Sarah Chen, a marketing consultant from Seattle, had been born in the digital archives of the internet. She had a social security number, a driver's license, and enough documentation to start a new life. I also made one more crucial appointment. Jennifer Walsh was the best family attorney in Chicago, and she specialized in the kind of complex estate planning that would make my revenge possible. Her office overlooked Grant Park, and she had the sharp, predatory look of someone who enjoyed complicated legal puzzles. "This is quite elaborate," she said, reviewing the documents I had prepared. "You're essentially creating a dead man's switch for your entire estate." Exactly. The moment I'm declared dead, the first will goes into effect. Marcus inherits everything. just like he expects, but if certain conditions are met within 60 days of my death, the second will activate, and everything goes to charity instead. Jennifer smiled. Ingenious. What are the trigger conditions? Evidence of an affair between Marcus and my sister, which Rebecca will provide exactly 30 days after my death. And if Marcus contests the second will, then the third will activate. The one that leaves everything to the Chicago Police Department's Widows and Orphans Fund, along with detailed evidence of his gambling debts and insurance fraud. Jennifer laughed. I've been practicing estate law for 20 years, and I've never seen anything this devious. Are you sure you want to go through with this? I've never been more sure of anything. The day of the engagement party arrived with unseasonable warmth for March in Chicago. I spent the morning at a small salon in Chinatown, getting my hair and makeup done by a woman who didn't know me, didn't pity me, and didn't ask questions about why I looked so thin and pale. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I barely recognized. The makeup artist had worked magic, giving me color and life I hadn't possessed in months. For the first time since my diagnosis, I looked like Charlotte Morrison, who had built a business empire from nothing. I chose a simple black dress for the party. Elegant, classic, and appropriate for what was about to happen. As I fastened my grandmother's pearl necklace, I wondered if she would approve of what I was planning. She had been a strong woman, a survivor of the Depression who had built the family fortune through sheer determination. I thought she might understand. The grand ballroom at the Palmer House looked exactly as I had envisioned. White roses everywhere, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over the crowd, and a string quartet playing softly in the corner. 200 of Chicago's elite mingled with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, celebrating the upcoming marriage of Charlotte Morrison and Marcus Wellington. I stood near the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. Business associates, family friends, Marcus's law firm colleagues, all of them offering congratulations and carefully avoiding any mention of my obvious illness. Charlotte, you look radiant, said Margaret Brewster, the wife of a city councilman. Marriage suits you already. Thank you, Margaret. I'm so glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Where's the lucky groom? I glanced around the room and spotted Marcus near the bar, deep in conversation with his best man. He looked handsome in his navy suit, every inch the successful attorney. No one would guess he was desperate enough to wish for his fiancé's death. He's around somewhere, I said. You know how men are at these things? Margaret laughed and moved on to find her husband. I continued greeting guests, playing the perfect hostess while keeping one eye on the entrance. Vanessa was late, which was typical. She had always believed in making an entrance. At 7:30, just as the cocktail hour was supposed to end, she arrived. The red dress I had encouraged her to buy hugged her curves perfectly, and she had styled her dark hair in loose waves that framed her face beautifully. She looked stunning, which was exactly what I had hoped for. Charlotte! She swept me into a hug that smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. You look amazing. How are you feeling? Never better, I said, and meant it. Good. I was worried you might be too tired for all this. She gestured at the crowded ballroom. It's quite a turnout. It is. Marcus will be so pleased. Speaking of Marcus, where is he? I pointed toward the bar, where Marcus was now standing alone, his eyes fixed on Vanessa with an expression I recognized all too well. Hunger, longing, guilt. I should go say hello, Vanessa said, but her voice had changed. It was softer, more breathless. You should. He's been asking about you. That was a lie, but it achieved the desired effect. Vanessa's eyes lit up, and she made her way through the crowd toward Marcus with the predatory grace of a woman who knew exactly what she wanted. I watched them greet each other with carefully casual hugs and polite smiles. To most observers, they looked like future in-laws meeting at a family celebration, but I could see the tension in Marcus's shoulders, the way Vanessa's hand lingered on his arm just a fraction too long. Dr. Harrison's nephew, Jake, was stationed outside in an ambulance, waiting for my signal. The plan was simple. I would fake a cardiac episode, appear to die, and then be revived at the hospital long enough to make my escape. Sarah Chen's new identity was already in place, complete with a studio apartment in Portland and a remote job that would let me disappear completely. But first, I needed to ensure Marcus and Vanessa gave me the ammunition I needed. I moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and making small talk, while gradually steering conversations toward the happy couple. By 8 o'clock, most of the guests had noticed that the bride and groom seemed to be avoiding each other. "Charlotte, dear." Patricia Wellington appeared at my elbow, her sharp eyes surveying the room. "Is everything all right? Marcus seems distracted." "He's just nervous. Big crowd, you know." She didn't sound convinced. "And your sister seems to be monopolizing his attention." I followed her gaze to where Marcus and Vanessa stood near the windows, their heads close together in what looked like an intimate conversation. As we watched, Vanessa laughed at something Marcus said, her hand briefly touching his chest. "They're probably just catching up," I said. "They haven't seen each other in years." "Yes, about that." Patricia's voice carried a warning. "I mentioned to you that Marcus dated someone named Vanessa in college. I've been thinking about it, and I believe it was your sister." "Really?" I feigned surprise. "How interesting. They never mentioned knowing each other." "No, they wouldn't have. It ended badly, as I recall. Your sister was quite the little manipulator." Patricia's words carried more venom than I had expected. Clearly, she remembered Vanessa better than she had initially let on. "Well, that's all ancient history now," I said. "They're both adults. I'm sure they can handle being in the same room." "I certainly hope so. For your sake." At 8:30, the caterers began setting up for dinner. I had specifically requested that the meal be served buffet style, which would encourage mingling and make it easier for people to move around freely. I positioned myself strategically near the champagne fountain where I would have a clear view of the entire room. Marcus and Vanessa had moved to a corner near the terrace doors, partially hidden by a large floral arrangement. They thought they were being discreet, but I could see them clearly from my vantage point. Their body language had shifted from careful politeness to something much more intimate. Vanessa was leaning against the wall, looking up at Marcus with an expression I had seen 1,000 times before. It was the same look she had given every boy she had ever wanted, from high school crushes to college boyfriends. Marcus was responding exactly as they all had, drawn in by her beauty and apparent vulnerability. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Rebecca. "They're together now, northwest corner, near the terrace. Get the photos." Rebecca was positioned in the hotel's business center with a telephoto lens, ready to document whatever happened. The photos would be crucial for the second will. Proof of the affair that would trigger the charity clause. As I watched, Marcus reached out and touched Vanessa's face, a gesture so tender and intimate that several nearby guests turned to look. The whispers started immediately, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Perfect. I couldn't have orchestrated it better myself. It was time for the final act. I moved through the crowd with the practiced grace of someone who had hosted dozens of corporate events. Every smile was calculated, every gesture deliberate. The guests were beginning to notice the tension between Marcus and Vanessa, exactly as I had planned. Whispered conversations followed in my wake. Speculation about why the groom was spending so much time with his fiancé's sister. "Charlotte," a familiar voice called out. I turned to see David Chen, my business partner and the only person who knew about my revised will. He approached with 2 glasses of champagne, his expression carefully neutral. "You look like you could use this." "Thank you." I accepted the glass but didn't drink. I needed to stay sharp for what was coming. "Are you ready for this?" he asked quietly. "I've been ready for weeks." David nodded. He was one of the few people who knew the full extent of Marcus's betrayal, and he had been instrumental in helping me restructure my business assets. When the dust settled, he would inherit my marketing firm and continue the work we had built together. "The photographers are in position," he murmured. "Rebecca has everything she needs." "Good. And the other arrangements?" "Jake is parked outside. Dr. Harrison is standing by at Chicago General. Everything is ready." I squeezed his arm. "Thank you for everything, David. Take care of the business. Take care of our employees. I will. And Charlotte? For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. As David melted back into the crowd, I checked my phone. 9 o'clock. The dinner service was ending, and guests were beginning to mingle again. It was time to make my move. I walked to the center of the ballroom, where a small stage had been set up for speeches. The string quartet finished their current piece, and stepped aside as I approached the microphone. The room gradually quieted. 200 faces turning toward me with expectant smiles. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate Marcus and my engagement. Your presence means more to me than you know." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. I could see Marcus near the back, his face pale with anxiety. Vanessa stood beside him, her red dress like a splash of blood against the white roses. "When I was diagnosed with cancer 4 months ago," I continued, "I thought my world was ending. I thought I would lose everything that mattered to me. But standing here tonight, surrounded by people I love, I realize I was wrong." The room was completely silent now, the weight of my words settling over the guests like a heavy blanket. You see, serious illness has a way of revealing people's true nature. It strips away pretense and shows you who really cares about you, and who is just waiting for you to die. A murmur ran through the crowd. This wasn't the speech they had expected. Near the bar, Patricia Wellington looked alarmed, her hand pressed to her throat. "I've discovered that the people closest to you, the ones you trust most, are often the ones who hurt you deepest. They smile to your face while planning your funeral. They hold your hand while counting your insurance money." Marcus had gone completely white. He was shaking his head slightly, as if he could will me stop talking. Vanessa's expression had shifted from confusion to dawning horror. "My sister Vanessa has been so supportive during my illness," I said, my voice dripping with false sweetness. "She moved back to Chicago just to be close to me. She's been here for every doctor's appointment, every treatment session. She even helped me plan this beautiful party." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "What I didn't know was that she's also been sleeping with my fiancé for the past 8 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Then the whispers started, a low buzz of shock and scandal that spread through the room like wildfire. Guests turned to stare at Marcus and Vanessa, their faces a mixture of horror and fascination. "Marcus," I called out, my voice carrying across the ballroom, "would you like to say something? Perhaps explain to our guests why you and my sister have been meeting at the Palmer house every Tuesday afternoon." Marcus's mouth opened and closed, soundlessly. Beside him, Vanessa had gone as pale as her white roses. "No? Nothing to say?" I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face. "Well, let me fill in the details for everyone. You see, Marcus has been having some financial difficulties, gambling debts, specifically. About $200,000 worth." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Marcus's law firm colleagues exchanged shocked glances. This was the kind of scandal that destroyed careers. "But don't worry," I continued. "Marcus had a plan. He was going to wait for me to die, inherit my $5 million life insurance policy, and then comfort my grieving sister." How romantic. The crowd was in full uproar now. Guests were pulling out phones, recording everything. This would be all over social media within hours. The scandal of the season. "The beautiful thing about being terminal," I said, raising my voice over the chaos, "is that you have nothing left to lose. You can finally tell the truth." I pulled out a stack of photographs and held them up. Rebecca had done excellent work, clear, damning images of Marcus and Vanessa in compromising positions. I have hotel receipts, credit card statements, phone records. Everything is documented. Everything is real. Marcus finally found his voice. "Charlotte, please, please, what? Please die quietly so you can inherit my money. Please pretend I don't know what you've been doing. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think." I turned to address the crowd again. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the happy couple. My sister and my fiancé who have been planning their future together while I waste away from cancer. That's when Vanessa finally moved. She pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with rage and desperation. "You're sick, Charlotte," she screamed. "You're dying and you're trying to destroy everyone around you." "I'm not destroying anyone," I replied calmly. "I'm simply revealing the truth. You destroyed yourselves the moment you decided to betray me." "You don't understand," Vanessa continued, tears streaming down her face. "Marcus never loved you. He loved me first. In college, we were supposed to be together. You stole him from me." The crowd gasped at this revelation. Patricia Wellington looked ready to faint. "I didn't steal anyone," I said. "But even if I had, that doesn't excuse what you've done. You used my illness as an opportunity. You planned to build your happiness on my grave. At least, I'm not a bitter, dying woman who can't stand to see other people happy." "No," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire ballroom. "You're something much worse. You're a woman who would seduce her dying sister's fiancé and call it love." That's when I felt it. The sharp pain in my chest, the sudden shortness of breath. For a moment, I wondered if this was real, if the stress of the confrontation had triggered an actual cardiac event. Then I remembered the small device Dr. Harrison had given me, the one that would simulate the symptoms of heart failure. I pressed the button hidden in my clutch purse. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Pain shot through my chest like lightning, and I gasped, clutching at my heart. The room began to spin, and I felt my knees buckle. "Charlotte!" someone screamed. It might have been David, or perhaps Dr. Harrison, who had been positioned near the stage. I collapsed to the floor, my body convulsing as the device sent carefully calibrated electrical pulses through my system. It looked like a massive heart attack, complete with the chest pain, irregular breathing, and loss of consciousness that would fool any observer. Through the haze of simulated pain, I could hear the chaos erupting around me. Guests screaming, someone calling 911, the sound of high heels clicking on marble as people rushed to help or fled in panic. "Get back. Give her room." Dr. Harrison's voice cut through the noise. I felt his hands on my wrist, checking for a pulse that I knew would be barely detectable. "Someone call an ambulance." "It's already on the way," David's voice, shaky but determined. I could hear Marcus sobbing. "Charlotte, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Too late, I thought, as the world faded to black. Far too late. When I regained consciousness, I was in the back of an ambulance. Jake's familiar face hovering over me. He had kind eyes and steady hands, exactly what I needed for the next phase of the plan. "How are you feeling?" he asked in a low voice. "Like I just died," I whispered. "Good. Because officially you did." We called it at 9:47 p.m. Massive cardiac arrest brought on by the stress of your cancer treatment. I closed my eyes, letting the reality wash over me. Charlotte Morrison was dead. The woman who had built a business empire, who had trusted the wrong people, who had been betrayed by the two people she loved most. She was gone forever. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we get you to the hospital where Dr. Harrison will officially pronounce you dead. Your body will be transferred to a funeral home that's been paid to ask no questions. And Sarah Chen will wake up in Portland tomorrow morning, ready to start her new life." The ambulance pulled up to Chicago General's emergency entrance. Jake squeezed my hand once before we got out. "For what it's worth," he said, "I think they deserved everything they got." 3 weeks later, I sat in a coffee shop in Portland reading the Chicago Tribune online. The headline made me smile. "Socialite's Deathbed Revelation Rocks Chicago Elite." The article detailed everything that had happened at the engagement party, including the spectacular collapse of Marcus's law career and Vanessa's desperate attempts to claim innocence. More importantly, it covered the reading of my will, which had taken place exactly as I had planned. Marcus had inherited everything initially, just as he had hoped. $5 million in life insurance, my business assets, my Lake Forest house, my investment portfolio. For 30 days he had been one of the richest men in Chicago. Then the second will have been activated. Rebecca had delivered the evidence of the affair exactly on schedule, triggering the charity clause that transferred everything to the American Cancer Society. Marcus had been left with nothing except his gambling debts and the ruins of his reputation. The article included a quote from Vanessa. "Charlotte was always jealous of me. Even in death, she couldn't stand to see Marcus and me together." I laughed out loud, earning concerned looks from other coffee shop patrons. If only she knew how little I cared about her relationship with Marcus now. They were welcome to each other. Two broken people trying to build something from the ashes of their betrayal. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Congratulations. You're officially dead. Hope you enjoy your new life." Rebecca had been the only one who knew the full truth about my survival. She had been paid handsomely for her silence, and I trusted her to keep the secret. After all, she had seen what happened to people who crossed me. I closed the laptop and walked out into the Portland sunshine. The city was beautiful, full of possibilities and new beginnings. I had enough money hidden in offshore accounts to live comfortably for the rest of my life, however long that might be. The cancer was still there, of course. Dr. Harrison had been honest about that. I had perhaps 2 years left, maybe 3, if I was lucky. But they would be my years, lived on my terms, free from the people who had tried to use my death for their own gain. I thought about Marcus and Vanessa, probably somewhere in Chicago trying to figure out how to pay his gambling debts with nothing but their betrayal to show for it. They had gotten exactly what they deserved, each other. As for me, I was finally free. Free from the lies, the betrayal, the weight of other people's expectations. I was Sarah Chen now, a woman with no history, no family, no obligations except to herself. I walked toward my new apartment, leaving Charlotte Morrison's ghost behind in the shadows. She had died exactly as she had planned, with dignity, with purpose, and with the last laugh. The best revenge, I had learned, wasn't destruction, it was resurrection. And Charlotte Morrison had been reborn as someone who would never again trust the wrong people, never again let others dictate her fate. I had died, to live, and it was the best decision I had ever made. 6 months later, I received a final update from Rebecca. Marcus had declared bankruptcy and was working as a public defender in downstate Illinois. Vanessa had moved back to Los Angeles, her modeling career effectively over thanks to the scandal. They had tried to make it work for a few months, but relationships built on betrayal rarely survive the cold light of reality. I deleted the message and never looked back. That chapter of my life was closed, and I was writing a new one where I was the author, the protagonist, and the winner. Charlotte Morrison was dead. Long live Sarah Chen. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now, and hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.